So, last time we stopped at having derived an expression for the curvature, and now it would be good to test this numerical procedure for estimating the curvature of a two-dimensional curve. And I think a good test case would be the ellipse or an ellipse. And the ellipse is analytically defined as follows. It's a two-dimensional vector and having entries a times cosine t and p times sine t. And in a two-dimensional plane, this looks as follows. Let's draw the plane. This would be the x-axis, this would be the y-axis, and let's have here value of a, minus a, b, minus b, and as t progresses, one starts here, let's let t be an element of 0 to 2 pi, let t be an element of the interval between 0 and 2 pi, then one starts here because cosine of 0 is 1 and sine of 0 is 0, and then one progresses counterclockwise and eventually an ellipse is defined. And with the arrow here I indicate the direction of progress or progression. And generally we have stated that the curvature is analytically generally given by the following formula. And this can be evaluated to be for the case of the ellipse as follows. Very well. The thing is now how to test our numerical idea with an ellipse. Therefore, I have already written some functions in Octave to both calculate the curvature of the ellipse analytically as well as use our numerical approach. So the first thing to note here, I've written a function that defines an ellipse. So what does it mean? This function takes as inputs values for a and b are the geometrical parameters of the ellipse, and t. And t is a row vector and contains all the values for t. And this function returns a two-dimensional array or a 2 times n matrix, and every column of this matrix contains a data point. So this means here we define points, and this is a matrix having dimensions 2 times the length of t, and then one iterates through the points, and here in this for loop, every column entry of this matrix here is changed according to the definition of the ellipse. So in the command window, therefore let's define values for t. So with the linspace command, I define, let's say, an interval in which discrete data points are given. In this particular case, 1,000 different data points, and the data points start at the value 0, and the last data point has the value 2 pi. And next step would be to use our function to define the ellipse. So let's call it straightforwardly ellipse, and the function was called define ellipse. And let's choose a to be 2, b to be 1, and the next input is the t row vector. Very well. And now let's plot this to check our result. Let's plot t, or sorry, for checking our result we need to plot the first row and the second row of the ellipse matrix. So therefore define ellipse underscore x equals to b ellipse. So with this command I extract the first row of the ellipse matrix, and let's also define ellipse y. So with this command I extract the second row of this matrix. So for it works, and then I plot ellipse underscore x and ellipse underscore y. Let's see if it works. Looks good. Now this is our ellipse. It has here here the ellipse starts at point 2, 0. Here we have 0, 1, 0, minus 2, and minus 1, 0. So the ellipse is now correctly defined. One can also plot this a bit better. Let's say make a different plot. Now here it's more clearly seen that indeed we have individual data points that define our ellipse. So very well. So now we have defined an ellipse for our testing purposes. Next thing would be to next step would be the analytical calculation of the curvature of the ellipse. And later on we can compare it to our numerical result. So for this purpose I also have written a function, namely it's called ellipse curvature. So it returns curvature values, takes as input again geometrical parameters of the ellipse a and b, as well as the t vector. And I've stated before that there is an analytical expression for the curvature of the ellipse, and here just first we define here a row vector, and this row vector eventually contains all the different curvature values of the ellipse. So now let's calculate this. Let's call it curvature analytically. So we can enter 2, 1, and our row vector t. So the values for the analytical calculation of the curvature of the ellipse are stored in the variable curvature analytically. Very well, seems like it worked. For checking our result, let's plot t, our parameter, versus curvature ellipse. Oh, sorry, curvature underscore analytically. Yes, no, that's correct. So this is the analytical evaluation of the curvature of the ellipse. So now we have created our benchmark, so to say. So in the next step, we would like to set up our numerical approach for calculating the curvature of the ellipse for every data point here, and then compare it to the analytical result. So for this purpose, I have first thing we need to do, or the first building block, is to define a function that interpolates 3 data points with the circle function. And remember, in the last video, we had this expression here, or better said, this expression here first, and then an expression for x naught, y naught. And with this matrix values here, we said that in principle we can calculate the center of the circle that goes through 3 data points, and with the center coordinates we can calculate the radius and in turn also the curvature. And this approach is realized with this function here. So the circle fit function takes 3 points in the xy plane, or 3 two-dimensional column vectors. They are called 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. And what it does, this function, is it goes just through the individual data points that are defined by the ellipse before. So to explain this a bit better, what the code actually does, it is, let's say we start here, or we have data points of the ellipse, we have defined them in octave, and then we take 3 data points. Here's 3 data points, and try to fit or interpolate a circle through these 3 data points. Then we get our value, or our center, x naught, y naught. This here would be 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. And this allows the calculation of the curvature at 0.2. For curvature, calculating the curvature at 0.3, we iterate further, take the next 3 points, and so on, and so on, and so on. And this is actually the basic idea. But now our circle fit function just fits through these 3 data points, or generally through 3, or interpolates, or conducts an interpolation, not a fit, sorry, or it's also a fit, but not regression. But yes, correctly speaking, or most accurately speaking, it's an interpolation, and through 3 data points. And remember our matrix equations here. It's here first I define a matrix, and this matrix consists of zeros. It's a 2 by 2 matrix, and according to our previously set up numerical calculation approach, we modify this matrix, and we also enter an expression for this vector here, and if the rank of this matrix is equal to 2, the A matrix, then as said before, it can be inverted, and then we can calculate center point. If the rank is not 2, then it means that all 3 points they are they lie on a straight line, but then the radius is infinitely high, so it is wrong here, is infinitely high, and the curvature is 0. But for our test case of the ellipse, this will not be relevant because most likely we will not have 3 data points in a straight line. So this I still need to correct for further purposes. Now the next step would be to iterate through all data points of the ellipse. As already said, we have P1, P2, P3, P4, and the only special case is for calculating the curvature at P1 here. Because we have set up that the T in octave, this row vector starts at 0, then has evenly spaced values, it ends at 2 pi. But then that P1, this means that P1 equals P final, because the ellipse is defined as follows. It's A cosine t, B times sine t, and if I enter here 0 or 2 pi, it's the same value. So the in the octave implementation of the ellipse, the first data point is the starting point of the ellipse, then we move counterclockwise, and then we move again back here, such that the first point is also the final point. And therefore, for evaluating the first point here, we have to perform the circle fit function with data point P final minus 1. So the second last value, P1 and P2. This gives the curvature at P1. And the next step here would be, then it's more straightforward, that we can have to apply the function circle fit for P1, P2, P3, and this gives us the curvature at point P2, and so on. But I think the concept is clear. So now actually this is the circular curvature function that does this loop over all points in the xy plane that eventually define an ellipse. So here I have set up this, here the initial and the final value of the curvature at point P1 and P final are calculated here, and then after this, here we perform a loop over the input dataset, and the input dataset is the 2 times length of T matrix that has column entries which define the data points of an ellipse. Yeah, and here again we every time for every 3 data points we then calculate the curvature. And here this execute plot, I do not talk about it here, but this is just I've implemented it to illustrate to illustrate how the fitting is done or how the interpolation is done with this function. So actually we can already do this now, and let's store the analytically or the numerically calculated values for the curvature in the following variable. let's call it curvature underscore numerical. And the function name is circle curvature. And the input are the coordinate values of the ellipse, which are stored in the ellipse variable. And the second variable is actually execute plot. And if execute plot is 1, then the so to say the fitting process is graphically illustrated. So let's start it. Make this a bit bigger, and you see here as described before, our fitting approach takes here every time, or our interpolating approach takes here 3 data points, and then you progress so to say along the column vectors of the 2 times length t matrix that defines the ellipse. And also the calculated center point, radius, and circle are plotted throughout the whole fitting procedure. And actually this looks quite good and illustrates here that now at this point here the radius of curvature is quite small, then the curvature is high, and then the radius of curvature increases here again, and curvature becomes smaller. So I think this illustrates the concept quite well, how the numerical calculation is done and how the loop works. Basically this is implemented in Octave, but one can do it in any program or any programming language. It's more or less matter of taste, in my opinion. Now we are almost done. Very well. Seems like it executed, the function executed correctly. So let's close the plot window. Now this was quite nice to watch, but we have now somehow to verify our result. Therefore, in the beginning, we had this, we analytically calculated the values of the curvature of the ellipse. So next step would be to plot the analytical calculation versus the numerical calculation. I will do this now. So let's plot again t, then curvature underscore analytically, I think. Then let's do not plot this as a straight line, but as cross data points. And then t curvature underscore numerical. So actually that's the comparison between analytical and numerical calculation. So the blue crosses are the analytically calculated values, and the solid line here is the numerical calculation. As one sees, quite a good match between analytical and numerical approach. Let's zoom in a bit further. Yeah, looks quite well. So the crosses here are the analytical calculation of the curvature, and the red line is the numerical approximation. So for a sufficiently high amount of data points, seems like this method works quite well. So actually we are at the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it. For me, quite interesting topic, and see you in the future.